Okay then, yesterday we took a look at our East Power rankings for the Overwatch League and its up-and-coming Summer Showdown. And now we're going to take a look at the West Power rankings. Of course, there's 12 teams in the West, so it's going to be a little bit more chunky than the last one. But the West is a little bit more interesting in my opinion, because it's tighter, it's a little bit less clear-cut, especially when you get to the middle of the league. And some teams can vastly overperform and some teams can vastly underperform. So it's a more difficult one to predict for sure in my opinion. And we're going to take a look into this now. Obviously, there are some teams that are quite clear cut because we know how well they've done over the past 2 months in a hero pool and out of a hero pool. And so it's very easy to predict those teams, but the rest of them, not so much. So let's get into our West Power rankings then, bottom to top. And this might be a little bit of a surprise, but at the bottom of the league I am putting Vancouver Titans. Now, the reason, it's between Vancouver and London, obviously. They're the two teams that are currently pointless in the standings. And actually, they're completely even in the official standings right now. Same map differential as well, -20. Only superseded by the Los Angeles Valiant, or Immortals Valiant of the East region. So, why have I put London above Vancouver? So I put London in 11th, right? So, the reason I put London above Vancouver is this little player called Sparker. Sparker is now eligible for the London Spitfire. He has swapped places with Hybrid going down to the British Hurricane and actually doing quite well for their feeder team. So this means one of two things. Sparker was a revelation in the EU contenders scene. He was fantastic, an actually great hit scam player. He was too young to play at the start of the season for London Spitfire, but now he's turned 18, so now he can start playing. Thing is, this whole London team, or this whole ex-British Hurricane team, now London Spitfire, was fantastic last year in EU contenders. Like, it was dominant. Absolutely dominant. And look how it's transferred to the Overwatch League. So, this worries me, and a lot hinges on Sparker. There's a lot of pressure on London, right? If Sparker doesn't do that well, then London are in trouble. Big time. And I mean win this season sort of trouble. However, if Sparker has that little bit of clutch to him, even that little bit, he doesn't have to be like the clutch potential he had in contenders, but even if he has that little bit of clutch to him that Hybrid didn't have, then London will be okay. However, none of the other parts have changed for London, and what you could say is that, well, EU Rush can now be played. Well, I don't actually think that's been London's best comp. Not gonna lie. I think Haddy had a good time on the Winston, actually. So, it'll be interesting to see how that works out. What worries me about that is the fact that Hybrid has dropped down to the British Hurricane, and he's doing wonders there right now. And that shows you perhaps that the skill gap might be a little bit of a big jump for Sparker, and he may not have the impact that London need for them to push forward. However, Vancouver Titans, who we were talking about initially, I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel for the Vancouver Titans. I see a get out for London that is Sparker. I do not see the get out for Vancouver right now. I think they will continue just to come up short against all of their opponents, to be quite honest. The big tellers will be when London plays Vancouver. I'm not sure whether that's this month or next month. I know London play Paris this month, so that will be the big tellers, and that'll tell you exactly who's the worst in the league. Well, in the west part of the league anyway. So that's something we'll have to remain to see, but I think London have a little bit more than Vancouver. So that's why Vancouver 12th and London 11th. So who's going in 10th? That's actually going to be Paris. Now, this could be a little harsh on Paris. Paris have been improving quite considerably. Vestola looked much better than I expected. I actually thought Vestola was a pretty mediocre EU contenders off-tank, but at Paris he's doing okay. Drijo's come in and done okay. So these changes to the Paris roster, these unexpected changes, have actually been fine. They've hit the ground running, which is good. It's exactly what Paris needed. Paris had a good June joust. June joust. Like, a 2-2 record, that's actually really good from Paris. And, they got some surprising results. They took a map off Toronto, that's probably bad from Toronto, but getting a 3-0 against Washington, no one expected that. Although that was against a poor Washington, I suppose you could argue that. And they also beat Boston, which is also another fantastic result. So, Paris had a good June joust. Can they maintain that form? I'm not sure. I hope, again, these EU teams don't really go back to one-tricking this EU rush style. I don't want to see that. I think they've looked better in this June joust at times away from that rush style, away from the Reinhardt. So, especially at this level of the league, please play what you're best at. Take a leaf out of Dallas Fuel's book. Just play what you're best at. Sometimes it won't work, but sometimes it will. It's better than playing something you're rubbish at and it never working. Put it that way. Easy? Play it like comp. No, I'm joking. Paris in 10th then. Again, they could be above Boston. It depends on what Boston do. Boston are in 9th. Boston I never trust. Boston started off the June joust in fantastic form, getting a 3-0 over Washington and a 3-0 over Toronto. And then I was like, okay, this Boston team's finally turning up. They're finally realising the potential they've got. Gabe Ulsey's in now. This is going to be fantastic. We've got a good Boston team on our hands. And then they go and lose to Paris, and then they go and lose to Gladiators, and then they go and just muck it all up. What can we do with Boston? We never know how to predict Boston because we never know. There's never consistency for Boston Uprising. That's why they are currently 9th in the overall standings with a 3-5 record. They should be doing better with the roster they've got. It looks better on paper. It should be able to contest more with the likes of Toronto instead of getting these weird wacky wins that they just don't make sense. They looked so good and then they look so bad. There's no consistency to Boston whatsoever and I never trust them. That's why I can't put them higher than where they are. I could put them lower, I could put them below Paris. Technically, perhaps I should, considering the results of the June joust. I'm putting a little bit of trust in them to be a little bit better, but I don't think they'll be massively better. And so, yeah, they're going to go in 9th. I just don't trust them. In 8th, Toronto Defiant. Toronto Defiant have had their little bit of issues in June joust, bringing in Aspire because, you know, they have problems with COVID. Hopefully that is now passing. I believe Logix is okay now. I may be mishearing that. But Toronto, again, a team that has a great amount of potential, doesn't realise it. I think, yeah, it's difficult. I really do think Toronto have got quite a good bit of potential in that team. It just doesn't seem to come out. And when they come up against the likes of Florida Mayhem and the Washington Justice, they come up short, which is not great. Like, Toronto should not have been losing 3-0 to Boston Uprising in week 6 of the June joust. That should not have been happening. And that's really disappointing. And so, when you look at Toronto, they do look like gatekeepers to the higher echelons of the Western Division, in my opinion. Like, if you can sweep Toronto, you're going to be quite high up in that Western Division, unless you're called Boston Uprising because you're inconsistent as all hell. But Toronto, yeah, they're just... You know what the word to describe Toronto is just meh. They're meh, Toronto, at the end of the day. They've got good parts, but it never clicks. And that's what's frustrating. Just above them, Florida Mayhem. Florida Mayhem in 7th, and... Florida Mayhem, they're a team that I think could be insanely good, but then they aren't. You see what I mean? Like, they took Dallas so close last month in week 8. Like, so close. And then they got pummeled by Washington as Washington ran it back after their really poor week 6. And then in week 6, they lost to Houston, when I think they're a team that could beat Houston. And they looked bad on comps they should be good at. Like, we realised that Florida weren't great on rush. Well, last month there was no EU rush. Reinhardt was banned. So you should have been able to play your dive or your double bubble, and you should have been able to excel at it. It should have been Florida's month, in my opinion. And it wasn't. Far from it. And that's really disappointing and really worrying. That's why I think they are still middle of the West Division. I think they are definitely above Toronto and Boston. I think they are better quality than them. But, again, consistency issues. They could be much better than they are. They could be one of the best. Instead, I'm putting them below them because I can't trust them to get the job done. As ever. These teams. Consistency means everything. Look at Dallas Fuel. That's consistency. And San Francisco shot to an extent, like they're consistently getting to the knockouts, they're just getting knocked out at the knockouts at the first attempt. So I suppose that's consistency, if you look at it that way. Sorry, that was a flame on San Francisco Shock. Anyway, Washington Justice up in 6. So, Washington Justice, Florida maybe should be above Washington Justice, but I think there will be a bounce back from Washington this month. They looked to come back very well in week 8 of the June Joust. That's what promises me about this. A 3-0 over Florida, and then taking San Francisco Shock to 5 maps, I think was incredibly good. After being thoroughly smacked in week 6, I think they were very rough in week 6. We have to agree with that. And again, June Joust was, or should have been, the month of Washington Justice. Dive, double bubble. It should have been right in their ballpark, and it wasn't. They failed miserably, which is very disappointing. 2 teams that let us down massively last month were Florida and Washington in the Western region, in my opinion. Like, absolutely massively. So, I think Washington will have a very strong bounce back this month. I don't tend to go off strength of fixture schedule. Do you know why? Because I don't think to a lot of these teams that matters too much. When I look at Washington Justice, I see a team that can beat everyone but Dallas. I'll be perfectly honest. When I look at the raw components of that team, I see a team that can beat everyone but Dallas. Same with Florida. You know, and that's why I don't go too much off of strength of fixture schedule. Because I think they are capable of doing it. And some of them will be capable of beating Dallas on their day. But Dallas is still very good. We have to take that into account. So, just above the Washington Justice, I am going to put the Houston Outlaws in 5th. So, Houston Outlaws, it was a weird month for Houston. Not going to lie. Like, they looked better than expected in a non-rush meta. They brought in Dreamer. It started off a little rough, you know, the loss to Atlanta and stuff like that, but at that time we didn't realize quite how good Atlanta were going to be in the month. But they had good results, right? 3-1 against Toronto. They beat Florida 3-1. They beat, I believe, London 3-0. So they've got good results. And in that respect, I still think Houston Outlaws are being very consistent. And when you look at the Houston Outlaws, they're on a 7-1 record right now. That is still very, very good. Very, very good. But the Houston Outlaws currently remind me of the Philadelphia Fusion, who, they're doing great in the regular season. Like a 7-1 record, that is fantastic. That is joint best record in the league with the San Francisco Shock. They've lost 1. Both of these teams are lost to Dallas Fuel, I believe. So, or did they beat Dallas Fuel? I can't remember now. But the consistency in the regular season is there, but the finals appearance is not. And that's the next step that Houston Outlaws need to take. I think they are a good team. I really do think they are a good team, the Houston Outlaws. And they look very consistent. In fact, actually, you could argue in the regular season they look more consistent than Dallas Fuel, which is high praise indeed. Dallas Fuel are very good at coming up clutch in these tournaments. And that's where some of these teams are lacking. When you look at the Seoul Dynasties and the Philadelphia Fusions and the San Francisco Shocks and the Houston Outlaws, they are lacking in that clutch in these knockout stages. And that's what's costing them on the points tallies. So that's why Dallas are out in front of everyone. Because, you know, they're just getting it at the tournaments. They're getting it done. A win and a finals appearance at a tournament means massive differences in the points tallies. And you can see it in the East region as well. So, the Houston Outlaws, I may have been a little bit harsh on the Houston Outlaws, I can agree with that. But I do think the other teams above them right now, in this very moment, I have to put above them. But, again, it's tight. It's very tight. Especially these 3 teams. So Houston Outlaws, the one above them, which is the Los Angeles Gladiators. Yes, the Gladiators. Gladiators were 4-0 last month. I don't think we can just gloss over the fact that the Gladiators had a fantastic regular season month in June. Again, the Outlaws dropped a game. The 2 people that completely wiped the June Joust in the regular season were the San Francisco Shock and Los Angeles Gladiators. San Francisco Shock are just above the Gladiators in 3rd. So, Gladiators, again, a team with great components that hasn't quite clicked yet. Another team that is lacking that finals appearance. There's quite a few of them right now, isn't there? Because, you know, there's only 2 slots that come from the West, right? But, again, we haven't seen Shock at a finals yet. We haven't seen Gladiators. We haven't seen Outlaws. We haven't seen Washington. Like, aye. That's crazy. So there is a lot of quality that has not gone to the finals yet. A lot of quality. And let's be honest, most of the time this season we're going to be looking at this thing, aren't we? It's going to be Dallas, but who's going to be going with Dallas? Same with the East region, it's going to be Shanghai, but who's going to be going with Shanghai? So, who's going to be going with Dallas Fuel? Well, it could be any one of these teams, right? And it will very heavily depend on their knockout performance. And at the moment, Gladiators' knockout performance was actually fairly okay. Gladiators' performance in the knockouts of the June Joust has been better than what we've seen from Shock all season, which is very good. And I know I've put the Gladiators below Shock, and that's because I still have this belief in the Shock. I think the Shock will reach a finals. I don't think this is going to be a finals-less season for the San Francisco Shock. I think they will get to Hawaii at some stage. I think the Krusty Clutch will come in because they'll realize, we need some points on the tally. Let's go to a finals and get that done, shall we? I feel that could come in for the San Francisco Shock at some point. It'll be interesting to see if it actually does. I might be wrong. I still think the Shock have got a little bit more quality than the Gladiators in positions. I just don't think it's quite clicking for the Shock. And I think some of that is down to the support line, not going to lie. The adjustment to FD God has not been great. And that's what I think they're lacking. Gladiators, I get the feeling they're going to be the bridesmaid and never the bride. I get the feeling they're going to get to the finals of the knockouts but never go to Hawaii. I get the feeling that it's going to be the Gladiators season all over. I get the feeling they're going to be the Philadelphia Fusion of the West region. Sorry, Philly fans. I just get the feeling. And that's why I can't rate them any higher, because in second I've got Atlanta Reign. I don't think anyone can deny how good the Atlanta Reign were in the June Joust. They may have gone 3-1 in the regular standings, but in the knockouts they were insane. Absolutely insane. And they've mastered this, like, weird style that they've got, and it's really starting to click. Pelican has been insane, on the Echo especially, and we're really starting to see this Atlanta Reign team click. The question is consistency. We've seen Atlanta Reign have pop-off months before as an org. Will they maintain this for the rest of the season? Because if they do, they are going to become very, very hot contenders to really push the Dallas Fuel. And that will be very interesting. We did, however, see them get completely pummeled by the Shanghai Dragons. We have to take that into account. So, again, I don't think Atlanta Reign are anywhere near Dallas Fuel, who are obviously first, because it's the Dallas Fuel. Dallas Fuel are the team to beat in the West. They may have lost 4-3 to the Shanghai Dragons in the June Joust finals, but they are still your Melee champions. They are still finalists in the June Joust. They are still better than any other West region team on paper and in the results. Quite simply, they are top of this league right now. Well, top of the West region. Not top of the league anymore. They lost out to the Shanghai Dragons because of the final loss. As Shanghai Dragons are on 11 points and Dallas Fuel are on 10 points. They are 3 points ahead of their nearest competitors, the Shock and the Outlaws, though. It is quite comprehensive, this lead at the moment. But it can all change if there's the final appearance for one of the other teams and Dallas failed to make it. The thing is, do we expect Dallas to fail to make it to Hawaii in the Summer Showdown? That's the question. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because at the moment, I can't really doubt the Dallas Fuel. I really can't. I think they'll get there. Will they win it? Who knows? Who knows? But I think they'll get there. So, those are my power rankings for the West region. Dallas Fuel, Atlanta Reign, San Francisco Shock, Los Angeles Gladiators, Houston Outlaws, Washington Justice, Florida Mayhem, Toronto Defiant, Boston Uprising, Paris Eternal, London Spitfire, and the Vancouver Titans. And it'll be very interesting to see how close we are to the right standings for this Summer Showdown coming up. No hero pools is going to make this super interesting. We've got more coming up with the meta preview and the preview of the first week's worth of fixtures coming up very, very soon. But I will be leaving it here for this one. All the socials are linked in the video description as ever for Legion Gaming and myself. Make sure you give the Twitters a follow, make sure you give the Twitch a follow, and make sure you join the Discords, because then you can have a chat with me, or you can have a chat with whoever you want to. who's in those Discords, obviously. You can't chat to people who are not in the Discord because they're not in the Discord ticket. Anyway, moving on. I'm going to leave it here for this one. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you'd like to give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.